Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to look at a common movement pattern that I see with a lot of players early in the swing where they stand up while they're going to rotate away from the ball, and it leads to just very poor contact, makes it hard to control the low point. That's going to be today's focus. So this is a pattern that I've seen with quite a few players, and it usually stems from players not being set up too well, or there's some physical limitations. So I first want to go over the main areas I would say to checking your setup. So if you're a player, just to make it really clear that early in the swing, you're seeing some lift and some sway off the ball, this would be for you. This is a video that's going to be tailored for you, and I would say specifically start off by looking at the segments above and below. So typically, if I was using 3D motion capture, I'd be looking mostly at what the thorax is doing in the start of the swing with this movement pattern, and the thorax will be lifting as it sways away from the target. So the segments above and below the rib cage would be, I would be looking at the neck, and I'd be looking at the pelvis. And more specifically with the pelvis, I'm going to be looking at how the player has moved into their bend in their setup. Because if the bend is not ideal for that player, they're not going to have the range in the hips to facilitate a nice move away. And I know it's early in the swing, but we're still going to want a nice free movement or some freedom there in the hips for the player to move, even though it is just that first step in the golf swing. Okay, so let's start off with the neck first. So real common tendency for me to see in players in the way they stand now is more just the chin sticking out, or they're just sitting in a position where there's some compression through the back of the neck. So essentially in the golf swing, a lot of the rotation comes through these vertebrae here. So essentially, and what we're looking to be able to do is be in a nice spot so that we can move nice and freely through this part of the body there, to this part of the spine. And if it feels a bit sticky, then let's look at just a couple of simple cues that could help you to move better. And of course, there's so much more that goes into this, and that's why I'm a big advocate of getting the body moving well away from the golf course before coming to the golf course. But once we're at the golf course, what can we do to help with that? Simple cue that I like with that is if you just feel nice and tall, allow your shoulders to open, allow your arms to fall down your sides, and just feel as though you're essentially pulling yourself up, almost like imagine there's a string pulling out the top of your head. So what we're looking for is more just feeling like you're almost lifting your rib cage off your pelvis. You're really lengthening through the back of the neck. We're not looking for this kind of a posture where we're somewhat extending through the spine. We're looking for more of a position where the eyes are level with the horizon. Should feel for many like the chin is slightly tucked and there's more length through the back of the neck. And then from there, that's where we'd want to go into our setup position, and that's where we want to be when we start moving our golf swing. So that's the one area to check, the neck. Then for the hip hinge, the simple cue that I give a lot of players is that once in a start position where your belt buckle is somewhat, let's just say, horizontal to the ground, softening the knees 1 inch, keep the same distance between the belly button and your sternum. So I'm just going to lay my club on the floor here. So keeping that same distance, 1 inch bend in the knees, keeping that same distance, can we go into a little bend? And one thing that may lead to players wanting to stand up early in the swing is if they're in too much flexion in the hip, because that's going to be a position where it's going to be hard to move from. So the player is immediately going to stand up from there. So start position, the amount that you've bent, super important. So once we're in our good setup there, what I always encourage with players is to move well through the neck in the start of the golf swing and move well through the thoracic spine. And one little cue, one little movement pattern our players do to encourage that is that if you let your arms hang, just allow yourself to have almost a little bit of a reach with your lead hand and a little bit of a pull with your trail hand. So if I do that, what you'll notice is that actually creates rotation. Okay, so in doing that, and I'm now getting rotation early in the swing without having to feel as though I have to stand up and sway off the golf ball. So if we can make the very start of the golf swing a good setup and a little rotation here through a little reach and a little pull, feel that would get me to about here, and you can see the rotational movement there very much from down the line. You can see that my chest is now more away from the target, but I'm not actually actively turn my chest. All I've done is I've rotated just a little bit, but then that gets me to about here. If I grab the club, I'm in my good setup there, good bend of the hip, good posture through the neck. That's what that takeaway motion now looks like. And I think for a lot of players, if they did really well in that first phase of the golf swing, eliminating the sway and the lift, it's going to help them to be a lot more consistent through impact. Okay, let's look at hitting a few there. Let's look at how we could train this, because I find that that's really valuable in many cases with players. Giving players lessons, they want more than just the concept, they want help integrating it into their swing. So if I was to work on this with a player, we would be going away from the ball and back to the ball quite a lot in the start, just to make sure that they've got a routine to get set up well at the ball. So the awareness around the neck position, the awareness around the bend and the pelvis is always primary. You've got to make sure you're in a good start position. And then once the player's clear on how they can get to this takeaway position here, I might have them just make a couple of rehearsals there. And then I might even, depending on what the club was doing, find a personal way to kind of cue that, maybe just behind it with a stick to make sure it's moving a certain way. But for me right now, if I wanted to work on this today, I'd be in here, couple of rehearsals. Again, what I find really clear here is, stands out to me, is that the distance between the ball and my eyes is staying the same. So I'm really focusing on where the ball is. And at the same time, there's not too much of a pressure change between my feet, just because I'm so early in the swing. So that's quite nice for me. It feels as though I'm just very active through here. And then from there, I probably see if I can get to there, have a pause, and then just go through to a nice balanced finish, swinging at say 30%. So nice and easy there. Just, and whatever the ball does, whatever sensations I get related with the movement, I'm really dialing into, did I do a good job on what I was working on there? I find that a lot of players, they're trying to mix and match movement and performance, which you essentially need eventually, but when you start working on something, you don't need to get overly focused on the performance initially. So once again, if I was working on this, being really precise with my setup, getting that feel, that push-pull feel, and I'm hitting it nice and easy, just pitching them out there.